Happy New Year. It's 2018. You're invited to join the next Fast for Peace on Monday, January 15th. Usually for these videos I can tell a story or two about Gandhi. This month's Fast for Peace falls on the 89th birthday of one of his students.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Dr. Martin Luther King would have been 89 years old on January 15th, and so this month I'd like to honor his memory and his legacy. One of the things that I enjoyed about reading the autobiography of Dr. Martin Luther King was finding that one of my favorite quotes from Air Force One was inspired by something that Dr. King had written. Peace is not the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. In college, he looked for a philosophy that fit with his own worldview. And in 1950, he heard a lecture by Mordecai Johnson, who had just returned from a trip to India, where he had studied the life and lessons of Gandhi. And so he came back and shared these lessons in a sermon. And Martin Luther King said he was so excited and so electrified by these ideas that he went out and he bought a half a dozen books on Gandhi so he could study them. These ideas of nonviolence really resonated with him because it fit in with his own Christian upbringing and the lessons of Jesus. Now, you've probably heard the story of Rosa Parks, how on December 1st, 1955, she refused to give up her seat on a bus and she was arrested. The black community decided that a boycott of the public buses was the best response to withdraw cooperation from the segregated bus system. So they put together a list of demands and spread the word that on Monday, December 5th, they would begin a boycott. In the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr., he writes that, "My study of Gandhi convinced me that true pacifism is not non-resistance to evil, but non-violent resistance to evil. Between the two positions, there is a world of difference. Gandhi resisted evil with as much vigor and power as the violent resistor, but he resisted with love instead of hate." He tells the story of how he and his wife Coretta watched and waited for the first bus to go by on that Monday morning, waiting to see how many people would be on it. And Coretta said, it's empty. And the boycott was working, that everyone was refusing to ride buses. So after the great success on the first day of the bus boycott, they'd called a big community meeting. Dr. King was supposed to speak, but it was last minute, so he hadn't really had time to prepare. And so he voluntarily abstained from food. He fasted for the evening and worked on his speech. When he got there to the church where the meeting was being held, he found it was overflowing with people. He got up and he delivered the speech, and he reminded them that we are not wrong. We are not wrong in what we are doing, and if we are wrong, the Supreme Court of this nation is wrong. If we are wrong, the Constitution of the United States is wrong. If we are wrong, God Almighty is wrong. If we are wrong, Jesus of Nazareth was merely a utopian dreamer that never came down to earth. And we are determined here in Montgomery to work and fight until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. And so as Dr. King sat down to thunderous applause, he said that he felt this was the best received speech or sermon that he had ever given. And so I guess I like to think that Gandhi's spirit was with him that night because of the way that he had fasted during the day.
The person who has influenced my life in terms of action more than anybody is Mahatma Gandhi.
He gave a powerful speech and it inspired the community to stand together and to stand strong. And they did throughout December, throughout January, February. In February, the city dusted off an old law and put together indictments for 89 people, including Dr. King. Apparently, boycotting was against the law. So civil rights leaders for the Montgomery bus boycott, they went beyond anything that Gandhi had done. And instead of waiting passively to be arrested, as Gandhi did, the community proactively, the leaders went to turn themselves in. And so in front of the courthouse on that February day, hundreds and hundreds of people put on their Sunday best, and they came there to support, as one by one, the leaders and the ministers and the taxi drivers and the hairdressers and the people who were being indicted and charged with having the audacity to boycott a segregated business. As the crowd swelled, as schools got out and the day warmed up, there was a bit of a carnival atmosphere. And the sheriff had to come outside and essentially say to them, "Stop having fun. You're not supposed to be enjoying this." That spirit maintained the boycott. People did the best they could to organize carpools and other alternative transportation. People walked, the same way that Gandhi walked 10, 12 miles a day to demonstrate their support and to show solidarity for the movement. I guess an analogy would be how the Indian independence movement, wearing khadi, was a sign of support. Walking in Montgomery that summer and fall and into the winter was a sign of support. The bus boycott went on for over a year before it was concluded, thanks to the Supreme Court decision that struck down segregation on the buses as unlawful. Martin Luther King was one of the first people to ride the desegregated buses. Dr. King's emphasis on nonviolence throughout the boycott was critically important. There was a minority of whites that were very much in favor of violence. On January 30th, 1956, which was the 8th anniversary of Gandhi's assassination, Dr. King's house was bombed. Even when that happened, he still remained committed to the lessons of nonviolence as a way to solve these problems. As part of Dr. King studying Gandhi's messages and lessons of nonviolence and non-cooperation, he visited India. He accepted an invitation in 1959 and spent a month touring the country. I was delighted that the Gandhians accepted us with open arms. They praised our experiment with non-violent resistance technique at Montgomery. They seemed to look at it as an outstanding example of the possibilities of its use in Western civilization. After returning, Dr. King said that as a result of his visit, his understanding of nonviolence and his commitment to it became deeper than ever. Although Martin Luther King never used big public fasts the way that Gandhi did, he did it personally and privately. Gandhi had spent many years in jail and tried to use that time constructively. So Martin Luther King would fast his first 2 days in jail. And he had quite a few first days in jail. He was arrested 30 times. You're invited to join the next Fast for Peace on Monday, January 15th, and honor the legacies of Dr. King and Gandhi by abstaining from food for 24 hours. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices. It's an act that shows you're willing to work for peace. I hope you'll join us for the next Fast for Peace. Until next time, #FastForPeace, and just keep walking.